Forensic Science Lecture 17-1, Bullet and Cartridge Comparison. Important markings of bullets: structural variation and irregularities caused by scratches, nicks, breaks, and wear may permit a criminalist to relate a specific bullet to a gun, a scratch or an abrasion marked to a single tool, a tire track to a particular automobile. Firearm identification can be extended to include more than just, is this bullet from this gun? They need to have the knowledge of operation of all types of weapons. The restoration of serial numbers has to be known how to do, detection and characteristics of gunpowder residue, and estimation of the muzzle to the target. Individualization is always the goal of all areas of criminalists, and it frequently becomes obtainable in the reality of firearms and tool marking examinations as individuals try and modify their weapons. Bullet and cartridge comparison. Inner surface of the barrel of the gun leaves its markings on the bullet as it passes through. The inner surface of the barrel is known as the bore, and these markings in the bore are particular to each gun. The barrel are produced from a solid bar of steel that's then hollowed out. Microscopic drill marks left on the inner surface are randomly irregular, and so this serves as the uniqueness to each of these barrels. So manufacturers require impressing its inner surface with spiral grooves. This is known as rifling. They create lands and grooves. Lands are the raised portion of the bore, and the grooves are the low-lying portions between the lands, and they serve as a guide for the bullet as it moves through the barrel. And it also has a rapid spin on it to ensure accuracy as it moves through the bore. The diameter of the bores is measured between opposite lands. So this is known as the caliber, normally recorded in hundredths of an inch to millimeter. So you have a 22 caliber or a 9 millimeter. There are many rifling methods that are used, but before 1940, barrels were rifled by having one or two grooves at a time cut into the surface with a steel hook cutter. As the need for more mass production of weapons came about, new techniques were developed. The cutting tool rotated as it passed through the barrel to result in grooves spiraling either the right or the left, which is unique to each manufacturer. After 1940s, a couple of methods that we'll talk about are the broach cutter, which consists of a series of concentric steel rings. Each ring is slightly bigger than the previous. It passes through the barrel, cutting all grooves into the barrel as it at the required depth as it rotates in the desired direction. And then the button process, which involves no cutting. A steel plug, or what they call a button, with a desired number of grooves is forced through the barrel or the bore under high pressure. One pass produces the desired land in the grooves, and then the button is rotated to give the desired direction of the direction and rate of the twist. And then the mandrel rifling hammer forge process, which also involves no cutting. The mandrel is inserted into an oversized bore and compressed, forming the rifle. And a mandrel is a rod of hardened steel that's been machined to form a reverse impression of the rifling. Gun barrel markings. Once the manufacturer chooses a rifling process best suited to the production standards and requirements, they choose a rifling process, class characteristics of the barrel remain the same. So this is how we can, as a criminalist, identify a make of a gun, because once they've chosen their rifling process, the class characteristics don't change. Striations are impressed into the metal as minute imperfections on the rifling surface, or they can be produced by minute chips of steel pushed against the inner surface by the moving broach cutter. But these all form individual characteristics. So class characteristic means that each of these guns are going to have the same number of lands and grooves with the same approximate width and direction of twist. Again, we can distinguish one brand or type of weapon from another, but none of those are individual. It's the striations that are those fine lines formed on the inner barrel that give us the individual characteristics to a weapon. As the bullet passes through the barrel, the surface is impressed with the rifle markings, and no two rifle barrels are identical or have identical striation marks, and this is because of those imperfections. Even those manufactured in succession are going to have different markings, just due to the use of the product, and there's no particular way to directly compare markings of fire bullets with the barrel. So the examiner will obtain a test bullet, usually fired through a tank of water, to then compare to the suspect bullet. So the number of lands and grooves and direction of the twists are points of comparison during the initial stages. Any differences either immediately serve to eliminate the possibility that both bullets travel through the same barrel, or if the bullets carry the same of these characteristics, then the analysis must then begin to study the striations. The most important tool to a firearm examiner is going to be that comparison microscope, which we've talked about before with the fingerprinting. This is a little bit different. The two bullets are observed and compared simultaneously, but the examiner has the ability to rotate one bullet until well-defined lands and grooves can be seen, and then the second bullet is then rotated until a matched region is found. Not only must the lands and grooves of the test and evidence bullet have identical widths, but the longitudinal striations on each must coincide as well. When a matching area is located, the two bullets are simultaneously rotated to obtain additional matching areas. But some things to consider is that perfect matches are rarely encountered all around the bullet. Most commonly, the recovered bullets have been mutilated and distorted on impact, so they yield very small areas with intact markings. The striations are also not permanent. Changes are not tend to not be dramatic to the striations, and they don't prevent matching two bullets, but continued alterations from where a succession of bullets have left the barrel. But the class characteristics, such as the lands and the grooves, those ones remain the same. It's the FBI that maintains records containing lists of class characteristics of known weapons. This is known as the General Rifling Characteristic Files. So this gives the examiner a base to then compare to find what type of weapon. Examiners will also receive spent bullets without a suspect weapon and are asked to examine the caliber, or asked to determine what the caliber and the make of the weapon is. So the caliber can be figured out by the weight as one factor. The makes of the weapon, for instance, the number of lands and grooves, direction of twists, width of the lands and the grooves, are a good starting place for eliminating certain marking. With shotguns, they tend to have a smooth barrel that generally fire small lead balls or pellets, and because of this, the smooth barrel, they're not impressed with any characteristic markings. By weighing and measuring the diameter of the shot recovered, the size of the shot used in the shell can be determined. In shotguns, the diameter of the barrel is expressed in the term gauge. The higher the gauge number, the smaller the barrel's diameter. Cartridge cases are also can be impressed with markings as it contacts the firing and loading mechanisms. They can be used to individualize the shell to the weapon. Shapes of firing pins impressed on the primer of the cartridge shell in the back. When fired, the shell also pushes against the breech face and is impressed with markings. The breech face is actually the rear part of the firearm barrel, and when the ejector, the extractor, or the magazine clip will also have mechanisms that rub against the metals that will leave different characteristics as well that can also be used. The ejector is the mechanism in the firearm that throws the cartridge or fire case from the firearm. The extractor is the mechanism in the firearm by which the cartridge of the fired case is withdrawn, and the magazine or the clip is the mechanism that actually holds the bullet. This ends lecture 17-1. There's a quiz next class.